Up and rolling. And we are looking at sample final exam version 5 today. And as you can see, all the questions that we've seen in the previous 4 exams, at least the type of questions are the same, right? So there's no surprise. Look at that. We have our first example. Our first problem here is our simplifying and combining radicals, right? All right, so number 1, we have 5 radical 45. Let's simplify that. That's 5 times radical 9 times radical 5, which is 5 times 3 times radical 5, which gives us 15 radical 5. And then we have minus 2 times radical 180. So I know in radical 180, there's let's see here. What can we simplify that to? We can do 36 times 5. Yeah, that's the biggest perfect square in 80. So we got 2 times radical 36 times 5, which gives us minus 2 times 6 times radical 5, which is 12 radical 5. And then we see these are like radicals, so 15 minus 12 is 3 radical 5, which is C. And then for number 2, when you're distributing the radical, right? Remember my little trick here? Radical 14 is the same thing as radical 2 times radical 7. And the reason I do that is when you multiply root 2 by root 2, you know that's just a 2. So that's why I get 2 radical 7 plus, and then radical 2 times radical 2 is 2, right? So this is 5 times 2. So 2 radical 7 plus 10 is answer C. Number 3, dividing radicals, right? If you recall from the other videos, we can write this as one fraction under the radical. So this is 6 times 90 over 5. And I know 5 divides into 90 18 times, right? So I'll cancel this out. So this is actually radical 6 times radical 18. Radical 18 is actually 6 times 3, right? Radical 6 times radical 3, which is 6 radical 3. So that's D. Okay, any questions with the radicals? So these are the types you should expect to see. Moving on. We got the laws of exponents next. Let's see here. We got a fraction in the numerator. I see some parentheses, a pair of parentheses there. But what I'm ultimately going to do is just work vertically here with the same exponents. Okay, so I know, oh, excuse, didn't mean to do that, sorry. Let me zoom back in there. Okay, so I know that 45 over 9 is 5, right? 5 in the numerator. And then I have x squared. Let me do that over here. X squared over x to the negative 6. That's the quotient rule, right? So that's 2 minus negative 6. So that's x to the 2 plus 6 is 8. So 5x to the 8. And then I have y squared cubed over y to the negative 1. So this in the numerator is our power rule of exponents, so it's multiplication. Y to the 2 times 3 is 6 over y to the negative 1. And then it's the quotient rule. So y to the 6 minus negative 1 equals y to the 7th, right? And that gives us 5x to the 8th, y to the 7th. And I see that is answer choice A. And if you have any questions, please type in chat as we go along so that you don't have any confusion. Alright, what is this, 5? We have 3x to the 4th, y, z to the negative 5th. All of this is raised to the 4th power. That's our power rule. excuse me. So this is 3 to the 4th. X to the 4 times 4 is 16. Y to the 4th. And Z to the negative 20th. Right? We can't have any negative exponents. 3 to the 4th is 81. We have x to the 16, y to the 4th, and then z is in the denominator to the positive 20th. And that is answer D. All right, any questions with that? Okay, moving on. Okay, next problem here. This is our combining like terms, right? And we have to first distribute to remove parentheses. So the first term here, first group here, you can just remove. So we get 8x squared minus 16x plus 14. Distribute this negative into the second group, right? So you get plus 10x squared plus 4x minus 4. And then we can combine the like terms, right? So we have 8x squared plus 10x squared is 18x squared. Negative 16x plus 4x, that's negative 12x. 14 minus 4 is plus 10. And we see that it is answer choice C. Alright, number 7. This is all distributive property here, right? So notice they don't give you the typical binomial FOIL, right? It's always going to be a binomial times like a polynomial, like a trinomial here. So we just distribute, right? 5x times x squared is 5x cubed. 5x times 2x is positive 10x. 5x times negative 3 is x squared. Forgot the 10x squared. Minus 15x. Then we move on to the negative 3 and distribute all of that. So you get minus 3x squared minus 6x. And lastly, plus 9. So let's combine like terms. We have 5x cubed minus 3x squared. 5x cubed is just 5x cubed. Then you have 10x squared minus 3x squared is plus 7x squared. And then minus 15x minus 6x is minus 21x. And then lastly, plus 9. So 5x cubed plus 7x squared minus 21x, that gives us A as our answer. Okay, number 8. Remember when we divide by a monomial, you just divide that into every single term of the numerator. So we have 14x squared over negative 7x cubed, negative 28x seventh minus over negative 7x cubed, negative 35x cubed over negative 7x cubed. So do these individually, and what do we get? 14 over negative 7 is negative 2. X to the quotient rule, 12 minus 3 is 9. Negative 28 over negative 7 is positive 4. X to the 7 minus 3 is 4. And then negative 35 over negative 7 is plus 5. And then the x cubes cancel out, right? To x to the 0, which is equal to 1. Okay, any questions? All right, moving on. Okay, so we have number 9, where it asks us to factor completely. And having seen these problems in the previous 4 tests, we should expect, right? If there's a difference of squares, right? We should expect that, right? Okay, so sorry, what's D? Oh yeah, I forgot to circle it, right? I forgot to circle the previous answer here. Let me do that real quick. Okay, so negative 2x to the 9th plus 4x to the 4th plus 5. That's C over here. Okay. Now let's go back to this. Oops. Zoomed in a little too much there. Okay, factor. We look for our GCF, right? Always look for the GCF first. And we get, let's see here, I think 6x is our GCF. Yep. So we have 6x, and then we have x squared. And then 96 divided by 6 comes out to 16y squared. Okay, I see that this is our difference of squares. So I get 6x times x plus 4y times x minus 4y. Okay, and that is answer choice D. Alrighty, moving on, we have to factor the polynomial here. So we have I've been doing the trial and error method lately, right? But how do you get that? You have 2x times x gives me my x squared. How do I get negative 6? One is positive, one is negative. But just remember the middle term is positive 11x. So my outer product plus my inner product has to add up to 11. So if I put a 6 here, I can see this is a 12x, right? And if I put the 1 here, I get 1x. And if I subtract the 1x, this is equal to 11x. That's how I know that the 1, this minus is in the 1. Okay? So 2x squared plus 12x minus 1x minus 6. So I see 2x minus 1 is one of the factors listed. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this is plus. Okay, any questions with that? Does anyone actually want to see the AC method for this problem before we move on? Have you also been trying to factor on your calculator? I know it's not exactly exactly the same as the polysolver method, but still. No? Okay. All right, for number 11, 4 terms, so this is our factor by grouping. So in our first group, let's see here, in our first group, and then in our second group, yeah, it is actually better. But anyway, in my first group, I see that the GCF is a C. So I'm going to factor out the C, and I get 5W plus 3Z. Okay, in the second group, I see that the GCF is a 4 and a D. So I do positive 4D, and I get 5W plus 3Z. And then I factor the common binomial factor, 5W plus 3Z, and I'm left with C plus 4D. And I can see that D is one of the factors, right? They don't have a C plus 4D listed. Any questions? Okay, moving on. Number 12. Well, y represents a number, so let me put that over here. Y is our number, right? So this is 6 times a number, means 6y, right? But we have 64 is, right? 64 equals, and then here's the tricky part, 73 subtracted from. Remember, subtraction, right? Some of the subtraction, the wording means you have to subtract it from some other number. What's that other number? It's 6y, right? And then from 6y you subtract 73. Okay? So don't confuse that, otherwise you might select the wrong answer. A lot of people mistakenly choose C, which is wrong, right? It's actually B. So that's our common mistake people make, so be careful. Number 13. So notice how in this question, they don't have a single fraction equals to a single fraction, like in version 4. Remember in version 4, you can just cross multiply? Well, this one you can't. So that's why I always told you, make sure you know how to find the LCD and multiply everything by the LCD. Okay, that's very important. Otherwise, you won't know what to do here. Okay, so let's find the LCD. So I see that there's 12, 45, and 15. So 12 is basically, if you forgot, you can list out the multiples of 12. But what I would do is actually start with the largest number, which is 45, and list those out. 45 times 1 is 45. 45 times 2 is 90. 45 times 3 is 135, right? Okay, and then out of those numbers, let me write it out. 45, 90, 135. And I'm going to pick each of these multiples and try to divide them by the other denominators. See if it divides by them, right? So if I try 90 divided by 12, it doesn't work, right? You don't get an integer or a whole number. So I know it's not 90. I know it's not 45, right? So let's try 135 divided by 12. It doesn't work. So I know it's not 135. So I'll do 45 times 4, which is 180. And then I'll do 180 divided by 12 is 15. So it works, right? 15 divides into 180 as well, and you get 12. So that's how I figured out 180 was the LCD. Okay? So I multiply each of these terms by the LCD. So I get 180 times x minus 4 over 12, right? And then minus, let me write the 180 times 8 over 45 is equal to 180 times x minus 8 over 15. Okay? And the reason you do that because you have to distribute the 180, right? So I wrote it out separately for you to see how this cancels out. 12 divides into 180 15 times, right? And 45 divides into 180 4 times. 15 divides into 180 12 times. So as you can see, we cleared the fractions. Now I'm going to distribute 15 times x minus 4 gives me 15x minus 60. And then 4 times 8 is 32, so this is minus 32 is equal to 12 times x minus 8 is 12x minus 96, right? So it's a one variable linear equation now. Okay. I'm going to gather my x's on the left hand side. So let me clean this up a little bit for those of you who like to see this as just two terms. 15x minus 92 is equal to 12x minus 96. So let's subtract 12x here, and we get 3x. And then we add 92 to both sides, so we get negative 4. Lastly, you divide by 3, and you get x is equal to negative 4 over 3. So that's answer choice B. Now remember, you can type this into your calculator. If you forgot, right, this is your number solver. So you got to go to second and then press number solver. And on the left hand side, you would put this entire thing. This is my left hand side, and this is my right hand side, right? So try that and make sure you know how to do that for the final. Any questions? All right, let's move on. The number 14, one variable in your equation we have to distribute. So we have 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 2 times negative 3x is minus 6x is equal to negative 2x minus 38. So I'll gather the x's to the left-hand side. I'll add 2x, right? So negative 6x plus 2x is negative 4x is equal to negative 38 plus 6, right? So that's negative 32. Lastly, divide both sides by negative 4 and we get positive 8. Answer choice C. Any questions? Okay. You can also do this on the number solver as well. Okay. For 15 on the final, I do recommend you do the system solver, right? Second, and then system solver, and type this in. That's probably the easiest and fastest way for you. But we do recommend learning this by hand, right? Okay, so I see that we have a two-variable linear equation system of equations, right? We should see or determine which factor I want to cancel out. So you notice all my answer choices are x equals, right? So that means eliminate y, because my answer choices are x equals, right? So if I want to eliminate the y, I look at the y's here, and I see that the first equation is 4y, the second equation is 2y. So I'm going to multiply the second equation by negative 2. And in doing that, I get negative 2x minus 4y is equal to negative 4. Okay, the first equation remains the same. And now we have opposites for the y's, right? Positive 4y and negative 4y. So I can add vertically. So the 4y and the negative 4y cancel out. I get, for x's, I get negative 6x is equal to negative 8 minus 4 is negative 12. And then divide both sides by negative 6, we get positive 2, which is B. Any questions? Very good. Going on to 16. Says solve for y, right? I see y is on the right hand side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract the 7x, move that up to the left hand side. So z minus 7x is equal to 6y. Lastly, I just divide by 6 on both sides, right? So I get z minus 7x over 6 is equal to y. And I see answer D is the same. Any questions? Okay. Let me scroll down a little bit. We need some space for this one. Number 17 is our polysolver one that you can do on the calculator, right? So if you don't know how to do it, it is useful to at least double check your answers, right? But it's a factoring problem, ultimately. So what I'll do is I look for a GCF first, and I see the leading coefficient is negative. So I'm going to factor out negative 3x. That's the GCF, right? Negative 3x. Then I'm left with x plus 2. All of this is equal to 0, right? And you can double check if you distribute, you get negative 3x squared minus 6x. Then using our zero factor rule, you can make each factor and set it equal to 0. Just like that. And for the first factor, you can divide by negative 3 on both sides, and you should still get x equals 0. Or the second factor, you subtract 2, and you get x is equal to Negative 2. 0 or negative 2. That's answer B. Any questions? Okay. Let us move on. Okay, first problem here is what is the value of x in the right triangle? So these numbers are a little blurry, but the hypotenuse is 25. Let me rewrite that for you here. This is 25. This is x, and this is, I believe this says 10. Okay. So remember, in a right triangle, you can use the Pythagorean theorem. And that means the hypotenuse squared minus the leg squared gives us x squared, right? So x is equal to the square root of the hypotenuse squared minus the other leg squared, right? So 25 squared is 625 minus 10 squared is 100. So this gives us the square root of 525. And that, you should probably do it on the calculator, is 25 times 21. So this is basically equal to 5 radical 21 is equal to x. And that is A. Okay, let's move on. Okay, in this problem, we have to solve the linear inequality, one variable inequality. So let's do that on the right. So I have to subtract 7x to both sides, right? So negative 3x minus 7x is negative 10x. And then I'm going to subtract 7 to both sides. 17 minus 7 is 10. So look at that. We have negative 10x is less than 10. Remember, this is inequality symbols less than. But when you divide both sides by negative 10, don't forget the inequality sign has to change, right, to the other direction. So this less than becomes a greater than negative 1. So you can see how A and B, people might mistakenly choose A when the answer choice is actually B, right? So here's our negative 1. Open circle on negative 1. X is greater than negative 1. That's B. Any questions? Okay. Moving on. Okay, we have two questions here. The first one here, given A equals 5 and B equals negative 2, evaluate the expression given below. Okay, so let's substitute these values in here. I'm going to use B in parentheses, negative 2, times A is 5, plus A squared, plus B in parentheses, squared, times A. Okay, so my first term here, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, plus 5 squared is 25, plus negative 2 in parentheses squared is 4, right? 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, so easy way to do this, you can do the, usually when there are a lot more terms like this, you could do the positives first, negatives second, and then combine them, right? But this one is easy enough. Negative 10 plus 25 is 15. 15 plus 20 is 35. Number 21. I hope you remember this one so that it doesn't take you too long to do. So you have a two-variable linear equation. So I told you, make sure, do the cover-up method, right? The cover-up method means you cover up 2x and solve for y because x is equal to 0, right? So when x is equal to 0, you have 2 times 0 minus 5y equals 10, right? So negative 5y is equal to 10, therefore y is equal to 10 divided by negative 5 is negative 2. So my first order pair is 0, negative 2, right? So I already know A is wrong and B is wrong. Let's see if C and D are right or wrong. Okay, so these both have negative 2. 0, negative 2 here, and 0, negative 2 there. Next, we have to figure out our y is equal to 0, right? Actually, let's just stay up here and do it. Okay, so y is equal to 0 means 2x minus 5 times 0 is equal to 10. That means 2x is equal to 10 and x is equal to 5. That's our ordered pair of 5, 0. So let's see here. Which one has 5, 0? And as you can clearly see, this one does not. And 5 zeros there. Therefore, D is the correct answer. Any questions? All right. So, yeah, oftentimes once you master that technique, right, of finding the x and y intercepts, this problem actually does not take long to do. You can do it in a matter of, even like in 20 seconds. All right, we have our last, what is this? Last page here, right? Let's try it. Find the equation of the line passing through the following points, right? Negative 3, 13, 4, negative 8. Write the equation in slope-intercept form. That is y equals mx plus b. So when you have two ordered pairs, we first need to find the slope, which is our m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to label the points x1, y1, x2, y2. That way you don't mix them up, right? So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So negative 8 minus 13 is negative 21 over 4 minus negative 3 is 4 plus 3 is 7, which gives us negative 21 over 7 equals negative 3. Okay, so that's our slope. This is our m. Now, we plug in one of the ordered pairs and the slope in to solve for our y-intercept b, right? So I'll use the first order pair. So y, 13 is equal to m is negative 3 times x is negative 3 as well, plus b. So I have 13 is equal to 9 plus b. Therefore, b is equal to 4. Right? 13 minus 9 is 4. So what's the equation of our line? The equation is y equals negative 3x plus 4. And that is answer choice B. Number 23. Find the horizontal line. So what's the horizontal line meaning? Right? It means it's a point passing through 5, negative 1 like this. The horizontal line goes through what? 5, negative 1. Right? So this is 5 and this right here is negative 1. So as you can see, the equation of the line goes through the negative 1. This negative 1. That's why a horizontal line is y equals negative 1. Okay? Please don't get confused on that problem. You're going to either ask the horizontal line or the vertical line. Okay, last two of the day. we have to find the slope and y-intercept for the equation above here. That means isolate the y, right? Because we need to have it in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to add 6x to both sides. So 11y is equal to positive 6x plus 66. Then we divide both sides by 11 and we get y is equal to 6 over 11x plus 66 over 11 is 6. So I can clearly see my slope is 6 over 11 and my y-intercept is 0, 6. And that is B. Any questions there? Okay, last problem for today. Let me zoom out a bit here. Okay, last problem for today. What is the slope of the line graph below? So I'm going to start off with the clear point here, 0, 4, which is my y-intercept. And I'm going to move on to the next clear point, which is 1, 2. So how do I get from 4, actually another point here is the x-intercept, 2, 0. But how do I get from 0, 4 to 1, 2? I have to go down 2, right 1. So down 2 means negative 2 over right 1. So that means my slope is negative 2. And as you can see, we're going down to right 1. Right? If you go down to right 1, it'll stay in that line. So that's my slope. Negative 2. M is equal to negative 2. And that's the end of the exam.